This is Capitol Insider with Morris Jones.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this special edition of Capitol Insider. I'm Morris Jones. In just a few moments, President Obama will address the nation. He's expected to invoke his executive authority and spare nearly 5 million illegal immigrants from deportation. That action would mark the most sweeping change to U.S. immigration policy in 3 decades. Republicans have vowed to stop the measure. They're weighing several options, including lawsuits, a government shutdown, and impeachment. In numerous speeches over a series of years, President Obama has called on Congress to pass an immigration bill. The Senate responded, but the effort stalled in the House. Now, Obama's under pressure. He made a promise to Latino voters before the midterms. Now, we'll see the result. Mr. Obama must sell the politics and policy of his go-it-alone strategy. He's at one of the lowest points of his presidency after a wave of Central American migrants at the U.S. border eroded public support for easing up on deportations. Many Americans support a path to citizenship, but they're not so keen on Obama acting on his own. Here's what we can expect. The decree will apply to 4.1 million parents who are in the U.S. illegally with children here legally. Several smaller orders will follow, but they will cover fewer than half of all illegal immigrants. What happens to the rest? I'll get analysis from our panel of experts in a moment. And after tonight's speech, Obama hits the road. He will pitch his immigration plan. Let's listen in.
Tonight I'd like to talk with you about immigration. For more than 200 years, our tradition of welcoming immigrants from around the world has given us a tremendous advantage over other nations. It's kept us youthful, dynamic, and entrepreneurial. It has shaped our character as a people with limitless possibilities. People not trapped by our past, but able to remake ourselves as we choose. But today, our immigration system is broken, and everybody knows it. Families who enter our country the right way and play by the rules watch others flout the rules. Business owners who offer their workers good wages and benefits see the competition exploit undocumented immigrants by paying them far less. All of us take offense to anyone who reaps the rewards of living in America without taking on the responsibilities of living in America. And undocumented immigrants who desperately want to embrace those responsibilities see little option but to remain in the shadows or risk their families being torn apart. It's been this way for decades. And for decades, we haven't done much about it. When I took office, I committed to fixing this broken immigration system. And I began by doing what I could to secure our borders. Today, we have more agents and technology deployed to secure our southern border than at any time in our history. And over the past 6 years, illegal border crossings have been cut by more than half. Although this summer there was a brief spike in unaccompanied children being apprehended at our border, the number of such children is now actually lower than it's been in nearly 2 years. Overall, the number of people trying to cross our border illegally is at its lowest level since the 1970s. Those are the facts. Meanwhile, I worked with Congress on a comprehensive fix. And last year, 68 Democrats, Republicans, and independents came together to pass a bipartisan bill in the Senate. It wasn't perfect. It was a compromise. But it reflected common sense. It would have doubled the number of Border Patrol agents while giving undocumented immigrants a pathway to citizenship if they paid a fine, started paying their taxes, and went to the back of the line. And independent experts said that it would help grow our economy and shrink our deficits. Had the House of Representatives allowed that kind of bill, a simple yes or no vote, it would have passed with support from both parties. And today it would be the law. But for a year and a half now, Republican leaders in the House have refused to allow that simple vote. Now, I continue to believe that the best way to solve this problem is by working together to pass that kind of common sense law. But until that happens, there are actions I have the legal authority to take as president, the same kinds of actions taken by Democratic and Republican presidents before me, that will help make our immigration system more fair and more just. Tonight, I'm announcing those actions. First, We'll build on our progress at the border with additional resources for our law enforcement personnel so that they can stem the flow of illegal crossings and speed the return of those who do cross over. Second, I'll make it easier and faster for high-skilled immigrants, graduates, and entrepreneurs to stay and contribute to our economy, as so many business leaders have proposed. Third, we'll take steps to deal responsibly with the millions of undocumented immigrants who already live in our country. I want to say more about this third issue because it generates the most passion and controversy. Even as we are a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%. And that's why we're going to keep focusing enforcement resources on actual threats to our security. Felons, not families. Criminals, not children. Gang members, not a mom who's working hard to provide for her kids. We'll prioritize, just like law enforcement does every day. But even as we focus on deporting criminals, the fact is millions of immigrants in every state, of every race and nationality, still live here illegally. And let's be honest, tracking down, rounding up, and deporting millions of people isn't realistic. Anyone who suggests otherwise isn't being straight with you. It's also not who we are as Americans. After all, most of these immigrants have been here a long time. They work hard, often in tough, low-paying jobs. They support their families. They worship at our churches. Many of their kids are American-born or spent most of their lives here. And their hopes, dreams, and patriotism are just like ours. As my predecessor, President Bush, once put it, they are a part of American life. Now, here's the thing. We expect people who live in this country to play by the rules. We expect that those who cut the line will not be unfairly rewarded. So we're going to offer the following deal. If you've been in America for more than 5 years, if you have children who are American citizens or legal residents, if you register, pass a criminal background check, and you're willing to pay your fair share of taxes, you'll be able to apply to stay in this country temporarily without fear of deportation. You can come out of the shadows and get right with the law. That's what this deal is. Now let's be clear about what it isn't. This deal does not apply to anyone who has come to this country recently. It does not apply to anyone who might come to America illegally in the future. It does not grant citizenship or the right to stay here permanently or offer the same benefits that citizens receive. Only Congress can do that. All we're saying is we're not going to deport you. I know some of the critics of this action call it amnesty. Well, it's not. Amnesty is the immigration system we have today. Millions of people who live here without paying their taxes or playing by the rules, while politicians use the issue to scare people and whip up votes at election time. That's the real amnesty, leaving this broken system the way it is. Mass amnesty would be unfair. Mass deportation would be both impossible and contrary to our character. What I'm describing is accountability, a common-sense middle ground approach. If you meet the criteria, you can come out of the shadows and get right with the law. If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, they're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half-century. And to those members of Congress who question my authority to make our immigration system work better, or question the wisdom of me acting where Congress has failed, I have one answer. Pass a bill. I want to work with both parties to pass a more permanent legislative solution. And the day I sign that bill into law, the actions I take will no longer be necessary. Meanwhile, don't let a disagreement over a single issue be a deal breaker on every issue. That's not how our democracy works. And Congress certainly shouldn't shut down our government again just because we disagree on this. Americans are tired of gridlock. What our country needs from us right now is a common purpose, a higher purpose. Most Americans support the types of reforms I've talked about tonight, but I understand the disagreements held by many of you at home. Millions of us, myself included, go back generations in this country with ancestors who put in the painstaking work to become citizens. So we don't like the notion that anyone might get a free pass to American citizenship. I know some worry immigration will change the very fabric of who we are, or take our jobs, or stick it to middle-class families at a time when they already feel like they've gotten the raw deal for over a decade. I hear those concerns. But that's not what these steps would do. Our history and the facts show that immigrants are a net plus for our economy and our society. And I believe it's important that all of us have this debate without impugning each other's character. Because for all the back and forth of Washington, we have to remember that this debate is about something bigger. It's about who we are as a country and who we want to be for future generations. Are we a nation that tolerates the hypocrisy of a system where workers who pick our fruit and make our beds never have a chance to get right with the law? Or are we a nation that gives them a chance to make amends, take responsibility, and give their kids a better future? Are we a nation that accepts the cruelty of ripping children from their parents' arms? Or are we a nation that values families and works together to keep them together? Are we a nation that educates the world's best and brightest in our universities only to send them home to create businesses in countries that compete against us? Or are we a nation that encourages them to stay and create jobs here, create businesses here, create industries right here in America? That's what this debate is all about. We need more than politics as usual when it comes to immigration. We need reasoned, thoughtful, compassionate debate that focuses on our hopes, not our fears. I know the politics of this issue are tough, but let me tell you why I have come to feel so strongly about it. Over the past years, I've seen the determination of immigrant fathers who worked 2 or 3 jobs without taking a dime from the government, and at risk any moment of losing it all, just to build a better life for their kids. I've seen the heartbreak and anxiety of children whose mothers might be taken away from them just because they didn't have the right papers. I've seen the courage of students who, except for the circumstances of their birth, are as American as Malia or Sasha, students who bravely come out as undocumented in hopes they could make a difference in the country they love. These people, our neighbors, our classmates, our friends, they did not come here in search of a free ride or an easy life. They came to work and study and serve in our military, and above all, contribute to America's success. Now, tomorrow I'll travel to Las Vegas and meet with some of these students, including a young woman named Astrid Silva. Astrid was brought to America when she was 4 years old. Her only possessions were a cross, her doll, and the frilly dress she had on. When she started school, she didn't speak any English. She caught up to other kids by reading newspapers and watching PBS. And she became a good student. Her father worked in landscaping. Her mom cleaned other people's homes. They wouldn't let Astrid apply to a technology magnet school, not because they didn't love her, but because they were afraid the paperwork would out her as an undocumented immigrant. So she applied behind their back and got in. Still, she mostly lived in the shadows until her grandmother, who visited every year from Mexico, passed away. And she couldn't travel to the funeral without risk of being found out and deported. It was around that time she decided to begin advocating for herself and others like her. And today, Astrid Silva is a college student working on her 3rd degree. Are we a nation that kicks out a striving, hopeful immigrant like Astrid? Or are we a nation that finds a way to welcome her in? Scripture tells us that we shall not oppress a stranger, for we know the heart of a stranger. We were strangers once too. My fellow Americans, we are and always will be a nation of immigrants. We were strangers once too. And whether our forebears were strangers who crossed the Atlantic, or the Pacific, or the Rio Grande, we are here only because this country welcomed them in and taught them that to be an American is about something more than what we look like, or what our last names are, or how we worship. What makes us Americans is our shared commitment to an ideal, that all of us are created equal, and all of us have the chance to make of our lives what we will. That's the country our parents and grandparents and generations before them built for us. That's the tradition we must uphold. That's the legacy we must leave for those who are yet to come. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless this country we love.
Live coverage on News Channel 8. President Obama claiming broad authority to grant work permits to millions of immigrants living illegally in the United States. They will now be protected from deportation. Tonight's executive action will have a sweeping impact on both the public and private sectors. Could also spark a political powder keg. For reaction and analysis, let's turn to our guest tonight on Capitol Insider, Sabrina Siddiqui, politics reporter at the Huffington Post, and Jason Howell, a 2012 U.S. congressional candidate in Northern Virginia and former president of Alpha DC, the oldest and largest professional association for Latinos. Sabrina, I'd like to start with you. We knew this speech was coming, but we did not know the exact details of this executive order. What did you hear tonight and what surprised you?
Well, I think a lot of what was in tonight's speech was expected, but one of the questions was the extent to which the president would expand his deferred action for childhood arrivals policy. That was the broad initiative he took in 2012, and he eliminated the age cap entirely. That's one of the, I think, biggest things to come out of this speech, because previously individuals, recipients of that program had to be under 31 by June 2012 when he announced it, and now he's not only expanded it so that you could have come later in 2010 as opposed to 2007, but also gotten rid of the age cap altogether, and that's really what advocates were hoping for, and they weren't sure that they would get.
Jason, tonight's address could reverberate well beyond President Obama's time in office. Latinos still hold former President Ronald Reagan in high regard, and he signed an amnesty program into law nearly 30 years ago. How will the Latino community view tonight's address, and how will it affect their view of the Democratic Party?
Well, first, Morris, thank you for having me, and special thanks from Edgar Jimenez, who is our current president of Alpha DC chapter. He would have liked to have been here.
Tell Edgar we said hi. I know you're watching this very closely. So we had Reagan at one time,
sure,
the favorite among Latinos for what he did with the Nicaraguan immigrants and others. Sure. Now we've got Obama doing this. How is it viewed?
Well, this is undoubtedly a win for the Democrats, certainly a small victory, though. My guess is, and my sense is, the Republicans would have preferred to have had this victory in 2015, but in short, they waited too long. And as Obama did, he sort of sensed the fierce urgency of now, which is what we tend to call that, and he took action. And it was a win not just for his party, but a win for millions of Latinos and their families.
Republicans promised an all-out fight against this overhaul. They think President Obama overstepped his authority. Alabama Representative Jeff Sessions called Obama, quote, Emperor of the United States. Senate Majority Leader-elect Mitch McConnell promised action. Let's listen.
If President Obama acts in defiance of the people and imposes his will on the country, Congress will act. We're considering a variety of options. But make no mistake, when the newly elected representatives of the people take their seats, they will act.
Sabrina, what kind of action is McConnell talking about? Some people are worried about another government shutdown.
Well, fortunately, this week, Republicans seem to have walked back some of the initial threats they made, which would have led to a government shutdown.
Even McConnell has been backing off on that.
He's been backing off on it, too, after initially saying that they might try to use the power of the purse when they try to fund the government in December. But now they're looking at a few other options so they could still placate conservatives who are outraged by the president's executive order. One issue that House Speaker John Boehner has been looking at is a potential lawsuit. Could Congress sue the president, even if they're not sure if they have legal standing? That's an approach he might float. They might pass a symbolic resolution in the House, and Harry Reid might even take it up in the Senate just so they can make a statement. And then, of course, when it comes to January and Republicans retake control of the Senate and control both chambers, that's when I think you'll see them use the appropriations process to try and chip away at some aspects of this policy. But it is unclear the extent to which they can do that. The president, after all, does have a veto pen.
Earlier, I mentioned the sweeping impact of tonight's executive action. It will change how laws are enforced, how visas are issued, and how U.S. businesses recruit talent in science and technology. But there are more than 11 million immigrants living in this country illegally. Obama's actions do not offer specific protections to more than half of them. What happens and where do we go from here? Jason, let's start with you.
Well, this piece of legislation, or really executive order, is a start. And my guess is it wasn't meant to be a huge wholesale change of the immigration policy, and it can't be. It wouldn't be, and that would be egregious of the executive branch. What we have now is an opportunity in 2015. One party controlling the legislature, one party, the opposite party, controlling the executive office. And what we have is a great opportunity is the American people are going to see votes, elections, really people writing legislation and it going to the executive office, and there'll either be a signature or a veto. When the American people are watching, good things happen.
I also find the TV network response to this address to be very interesting. ABC, CBS, and NBC decided not to cover it. Univision delayed their Latin Grammy Awards for President Obama. Generally, major broadcast networks carry presidential speeches on important issues, and unless the address is seen as heavily political in nature. What's your sense? Was tonight's speech overly political, Sabrina?
It wasn't necessarily overtly political, because it's worth noting that the major networks did carry a similar speech by President George W. Bush in 2006. Now, that speech was on a Monday night. Thursday's a really big night for TV. A lot of them have some of their highest rated programs tonight, and they also have the excuse now that they can stream these online. Technology has changed the way that people watch a lot of these speeches. And I also think that they have rebuffed, notably, this president on matters of domestic policy. He wanted to give a speech on health care earlier this year. They also chose not to air that. They seem to focus in particular on foreign policy, military operations with this president.
Rachel Scher, our reporter, is at Casa de Maryland watching the activities along with the crowds there. Rachel, how was this received tonight?
Morris, they said it was a very exciting night to watch the president's speech this evening, but the work, it's not over. Here joining me with more is Gustavo Andrade. Gustavo's with Casa de Maryland. Give us your reaction to the president's speech overall.
Listen, I think it's wonderful. These are words we've been waiting to hear for years and years. And tonight, finally, our community and our members got a huge measure of justice. Our hearts are full with joy, with passion, with pride. And we know that there's a lot of work left to do, but tonight, President Obama really recognized, I think, the dignity in everybody's contributions to this country and the dignity that's inherent in every human being.
Any surprises in his speech? Any disappointments?
Look, our work isn't going to be done until we get justice for everybody. But the joy at hearing him say that and making his case to the American public that really our families matter. And this is about bringing justice to human beings was the most important part.
So where does the immigration movement go from here? Tonight's obviously celebratory, but what about tomorrow?
Look, tomorrow a lot of families are going to make plans about having Thanksgiving dinner together with their loved ones without fearing of deportation. But really we're going to have to make plans immediately to legalize hundreds of thousands of people. They're going to rely on organizations like ours to be able to help folks fill out the paperwork and navigate the system. But we also have to continue to fight for issues of justice and dignity for folks who are left out of this program, but also for issues that affect everyone, like the minimum wage and other issues of economic justice, like access to health care, access to education. And these are wonderful things that we look forward to continue fighting on.
All right, Gustavo Andrade, thank you so much for your perspective on this historic night. And there are a lot of emotions here tonight, a lot of people with tears in their eyes, clasping American flags. You can see this is a momentous occasion for people here at the Hyattsville headquarters of Casa de Maryland. And for now, we're going to throw it back to you, Morris. The work, though, just getting started.
You're right, Rachel Scher, thank you for that update. Well, the midterms are over. Republicans control Congress. President Obama is largely a lame duck. He's thinking about his legacy here.
The president, I say in all sincerity, is looking forward to this debate. that the president feels very confident both in the steps that he's taken. He also feels very confident in knowing that these steps are going to be good for the country.
Final thoughts from Josh Earnest on the panel. What do you think about the Obama's legacy and what lies ahead?
Well, there's a lot left to be done. You know, this is really one step in a long staircase and a journey, really, of actions that will continue to happen between both the legislature and the executive office. What's important to see here is that it's not just legislation, it's not just an issue, it's real people. There are people outside of the White House currently, women who are part of the Bacalao organization who haven't eaten since November 3rd. In fact, on Monday, one woman from Chicago, Susanna Sandoval, passed out. And so when you have people outside of the home starving themselves for something that's this important, we know it's real and it will carry on.
Sabrina, we've seen so much talk about this executive action, but it's going to take 6 months to roll things out. Do you think the Senate and the House, for that matter, will try to undo some of these things? I mean, they can remove funding.
Well, I think that the president has put Republicans in a deliberately awkward position because they've struggled with immigration politics ever since 2012. Leading into 2016, they will continue to struggle, and he's making them decide now. He's putting forward a choice. You can undo what I've just announced and then face the political backlash, or you can go ahead and finally act on immigration reform. Certainly, the Senate passed its bill, the House still hasn't acted, and now would be the time for them to step up.
Jason, what do you think that Congress is going to do from this point on? Again, it's going to take 6 months. It's not a done deal, even though the president says it is.
No, and there's a lot of opportunity, as I mentioned before. The Congress will be wise to go legislation by legislation, piece by piece, send bills to the president's desk as he requested, and let him veto or let him sign them. Put the responsibility where it should be, which is the president signing things that legislators write. And at that point, you'll have the opportunity for the American people to judge what's right or wrong, and it'll tell the tale in 2016.
Jason Howell and Sabrina Siddiqui, our guests tonight on this special edition of the program. Thank you both for your insight.
Thank you for having us.
That wraps up this special edition of Capitol Insider. I'm Morris Jones. Thanks for being with us. Join me tomorrow night at 8 when our ace political panel will debate the president's executive order, Keystone, and Jim Webb 2016. Till then, keep it right here on News Channel 8.